To the outside world, Ava Langston lived a charmed life. Her husband, Nathan, was a rising star in corporate law, handsome, articulate, and dripping with the kind of success that made everyone in their social circle a little jealous. Their home, a modernized colonial tucked behind white hydrangeas in Westfield, New Jersey, looked like it belonged in a lifestyle magazine. Their friends joked they were the Langstons, like they were a brand. But behind closed doors, Ava's heart beat to the rhythm of restraint. Her marriage hadn't always been brittle. There had been real love once, laughter, passion. But over the last 3 years, Nathan had grown distant, calculating. He still played the charming husband at parties, but behind the smiles were subtle barbs, critiques masked as jokes, and a coldness that Ava couldn't thaw, no matter how hard she tried. It started small, his eyes lingering too long on his assistant's texts, his phone suddenly flipped over more often than not, the late nights explained away with corporate jargon. Ava noticed it all, and she kept the peace, until she found the document. It was buried in the back of their shared filing cabinet. A prenuptial agreement, one she had signed 10 years ago under the haze of love and champagne. Except this copy had handwritten amendments, clauses she didn't remember. One in particular made her stomach tighten. Clause 14. In the event of Ava's infidelity, all shared marital assets revert to Nathan Langston. But what made her blood run cold was the date scribbled in Nathan's handwriting beside it, March 4th, 2023, nearly a year after they'd married. He had changed it without her knowledge, after the wedding, after the vows, after she'd been bound to him, and the notary seal was recent. Ava blinked back the sting in her eyes. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was legal, strategic. He was preparing to destroy her, slowly and neatly, and suddenly, all the tiny humiliations added up. Her silence at dinner parties, his gaslighting when she asked simple questions, the locked drawer in his study, the text from someone saved only as S. This wasn't just a failing marriage. It was a setup, the first crack. Ava didn't say anything immediately. She made tea, folded the laundry. She moved like she was inside a dream, her motions disconnected from her mind. But by nightfall, something inside her snapped into sharp, cold focus. She stopped hoping Nathan would change. Instead, she began to listen. The next morning, while Nathan was in the shower, she quietly photographed the altered prenup on her phone and emailed it to herself with the subject line, "Insurance." She smiled politely at breakfast as he critiqued her choice of jam. "Strawberry again? You know marmalade is better for your digestion." She replied sweetly, "I'll pick some up tomorrow." And she did, along with a voice recorder, a burner phone, and a new Gmail account. Ava Unfolds 23. That night, she created a spreadsheet labeled Nathan's Lies. She started logging patterns, receipts, suspicious texts, times he was working late, and even meals he claimed to have had that didn't match the leftovers in the fridge. But Ava wasn't out for blind revenge. Not yet. She wanted truth and control. Because if Nathan had rewritten their marriage like a contract, then Ava was about to turn his paper game into a full-blown exposé. A visit from the past. It was an unusually warm Saturday in March when Ava's older sister, Julia, stopped by unannounced. Julia, who had always been the family's truth-teller, the one Ava once leaned on before Nathan systematically isolated her from anyone who made her feel strong. They sat on the back patio, sipping wine, and Julia finally said, "You look tired, Aves. Not like sleepy tired, but soul tired." Ava hesitated. Then she opened her mouth, and 10 years of whispered pain poured out. She told Julia everything, the silent cruelty, the manipulation, the forged claws. Julia listened, her knuckles white around her wine glass. "I knew something was off," she said finally. "I kept trying to call, but he always made you sound busy, or tired, or too stressed to talk." "I was all those things," Ava whispered, "but mostly I was scared." Julia leaned forward. "You're not anymore, and you're not alone." Ava's throat tightened, and in that moment, she realized the first part of her plan had already worked. She had found her voice again. The plan begins. Over the next few weeks, Ava played the long game. She kissed Nathan's cheek. She complimented his ties. She played her role so well that Nathan started to let his guard down again. Meanwhile, Julia introduced Ava to a friend, a paralegal named Serena, who worked at a rival law firm. Serena wasn't just sympathetic, she was sharp and furious. "You have enough here to start building a case," Serena told her one night over encrypted messages. "Forgery, coercion, maybe even constructive fraud." Ava leaned back in her chair and exhaled. For the first time in years, she didn't feel powerless. She felt dangerous. She wasn't going to just leave Nathan. She was going to expose him. And if he wanted war, Ava Langston had just stepped onto the battlefield, with every silent bruise turned into evidence, and every insult engraved into her resolve. Nathan noticed the shift, but not in a way that raised alarm. In fact, he mistook Ava's newfound calm for surrender. He liked her docile again, liked the way she made his coffee just the way he preferred it, black with 2 drops of honey, how she smiled when he corrected her stories at dinner with their friends, how she laughed politely even when his sarcasm cut too close to the bone. He didn't see it for what it was, performance. And Ava had become a master of the role. Behind the practiced smiles, she was meticulously weaving a net. Every day she uncovered another thread in Nathan's web of lies. She found screenshots of a Venmo transfer to someone named Sienna labeled, "For the hotel, baby heart." She cross-checked hotel receipts, catching a weekend conference in Philly that matched the date. One night, while he was asleep, Ava used his face to unlock his phone and forwarded everything to her burner Gmail. The guilt she expected to feel never came, just a slow, simmering sense of justice. The other woman. Sienna was younger, 28, blonde, with a curated Instagram feed filled with aesthetic coffees and mirror selfies. It wasn't long before Ava located her, an interior design consultant who'd once decorated the lobby of Nathan's firm. Ava didn't reach out, not yet. Instead, she created an anonymous account and sent Sienna a single message. "You're not the only one he calls baby." She attached a photo of Nathan and herself at last year's holiday party, his arm around Ava's waist, the ring on her finger still catching the light. Sienna blocked the account within minutes. But 2 days later, Nathan came home with tight shoulders and poured himself a double scotch. He didn't say why he was irritable, but Ava could see the cracks forming. Good, she thought. Let it unravel. The hidden files. Serena's contact in digital forensics had pulled something Ava couldn't believe. A hidden folder in Nathan's cloud backups, password protected. But Ava guessed it in 3 tries. Lexington 23, the name of the street they'd honeymooned on in New Orleans. Inside were hundreds of files. Some were screenshots of text messages, surveillance photos, some of her at yoga, walking their dog, sitting with Julia at a cafe. One file was a spreadsheet titled Exit Strategy. In it were timelines, budget breakdowns, legal notes. He had been planning to divorce her for over a year, waiting, watching, collecting data to support a false claim of her instability. Bank records, edited texts made to look like she was talking to another man. He was manufacturing evidence. He wasn't just cold, he was calculated, dangerous in the most composed, charming way. Ava closed the laptop. Her hands shook, not with fear, with fury. She didn't want to just leave him now. She wanted to incinerate every lie he'd ever built. Stage 2, Seeds of Doubt. It started small. Ava began dropping crumbs of suspicion inside Nathan's world. He'd come home to find his phone battery dead. Odd, since he swore he charged it. His inbox would log an access from unknown location. Sometimes the files in his cloud folder would look shifted. She deleted nothing, changed nothing, just moved things, slightly, enough to make him question his own systems. He began to wake in the night, unlocking his phone, checking his files. Paranoia, exactly what Ava wanted, the dinner party. It was supposed to be a simple gathering, 2 other couples, catered Italian, curated jazz playlist. But Ava had slipped something into the evening more potent than wine. She waited until everyone was settled with tiramisu and espresso shots before she smiled and looked across the table. "So, Nathan," she said, her voice light, "did Sienna like the flowers?" There was a beat of silence. Forks paused midair. Nathan froze. His eyes narrowed, calculating. "Excuse me?" he asked, a chuckle buried beneath forced charm. Ava tilted her head. "The white orchids. You said she loved white. I assumed she did when you ordered them for her hotel room last Friday." Silence. The guests glanced at each other, confused, half laughing, half tense. Nathan's nostrils flared just slightly. He let out a short, tight laugh. "Babe, what are you talking about?" Ava sipped her wine. "Nothing. Just making conversation." The subject changed quickly, but the tension did not. That night, Nathan didn't touch her. He sat on the edge of the bed for hours, scrolling, and Ava smiled into the dark. New allies. Serena arranged a private meeting with a whistleblower from Nathan's firm, a junior associate who'd noticed discrepancies in his legal filings. Money trails that didn't make sense, settlements that seemed forged. He'd never spoken up until Ava reached out anonymously. They met in a quiet cafe 2 towns over. His name was Eli, and his conscience was loud enough to finally drown his fear. "What Nathan's doing," he said, "it's not just personal, it's criminal." With Eli's testimony, Ava was now sitting on more than just a family scandal. She was sitting on potential charges that could bury Nathan's career. The countdown begins. Ava circled the date in red on the back of her closet door. June 10th, their 10-year wedding anniversary. The day Nathan had planned to surprise her with the divorce and claim everything. Instead, Ava would beat him to it. She had everything lined up: the files, the witnesses, the proof of forgery, and an attorney Nathan had once bullied in court who now owed Serena a favor. But Ava wasn't just going for a courtroom win. She wanted the truth to come out. Publicly. She wanted people to see who he really was. The man who smiled for photos while crafting legal traps for the woman he promised to love. She stared at the circle around June 10th and whispered under her breath, "You should have picked someone who didn't learn how to fight in silence." False calm before the storm. The Langston house had never been quieter. The halls no longer echoed with arguments or affection, just the hollow stillness of 2 people waiting for their next move. Nathan still kissed Ava on the cheek each morning before leaving for work, still called her honey in front of their neighbors. But there was a tension beneath it now, a brittle silence that made Ava feel like she was living inside a porcelain dollhouse. One misstep, and everything would shatter. She kept her movements light, predictable. But under the surface, everything was in motion. Each morning, after Nathan left, Ava unlocked her private war room, Julia's old attic office, which now housed a corkboard of timelines, receipts, voice memos, and screenshots. Serena had added post-it tags in pink labeled violation, forged, and deceit. June 10th was getting closer, and Ava had one more thread to pull. Contacting the enemy. Sienna had finally unblocked the anonymous account. Ava didn't waste time. She messaged her directly, no games. "If you don't want to be collateral damage, meet me. We both know Nathan's not who he says he is." It took 2 days. Then a simple reply. "Tomorrow, 11 a.m., Grounds and Grind, 2nd Avenue." Ava arrived early, hands cool around a ceramic mug of coffee, dressed in soft neutrals and quiet power. Sienna walked in right on time, tight ponytail, sunglasses still on, trying to control her expression. "You're his wife," she said, sitting down with a bitter smile. "I am," Ava replied, "but that's not why I asked to meet." Sienna looked away. "I broke things off, weeks ago." "I know. But this isn't just about you and me," Ava said, pulling a manila envelope from her tote and sliding it across the table. "It's about how many women he's done this to, and what he's planning to do with everything we've helped him build." Sienna hesitated, then opened it. Inside were copies of emails, hotel reservations, text exchanges, and most damning, Nathan's exit strategy spreadsheet with coded references to disposal phase and asset liquidation. Sienna paled. "You were just a pawn," Ava said gently, "but now you can be something more." Sienna blinked, and when she looked up, her face had changed. "Whatever you need," she said. "I'm in." The public seed. Ava didn't want revenge whispered behind doors. She wanted exposure. She created a fake Reddit account under a throwaway email. Then, she crafted a post under r/true off my chest. "My husband is a lawyer, charming, successful, respected. He's also a liar who's secretly rewritten our prenup to trap me, gaslit me into silence, and used other women as bait in his long-game divorce strategy. But I've documented everything, and I'm about to go public." If this sounds familiar, or you've dated someone like this, check your receipts. You might be part of his spreadsheet too. The post blew up. Within a day, it had over 6,000 upvotes. Dozens of anonymous messages poured in. 2 women from Nathan's college days, another from his firm who'd signed a strange NDA after a brief romance. Serena began coordinating with a journalist Ava trusted, Lauren Brenner, who'd exposed a hedge fund embezzlement scandal last year. Quietly, strategically, Ava shared everything. Lauren's voice crackled over the phone. "Once this story drops, it'll explode. You sure you're ready?" Ava smiled. "I was born ready. I just forgot for a while." The leverage play. Back at home, Nathan was unraveling in subtle shades. He found his golf club membership mysteriously suspended, due to a leaked file suggesting misuse of firm funds. His firm's legal auditor scheduled an emergency internal review. Sienna, now armed with Ava's evidence, had filed a formal complaint. Ava pretended not to notice. Until one night, Nathan cornered her in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, his tone too smooth to trust. "You've been different lately," he said, focused, cold. She met his eyes. "I've just been thinking more clearly." Nathan smiled. "Good, because I was thinking we could talk about the prenup, maybe update it again. Fresh start." Ava laughed, quietly. "You know what they say about liars who write their own endings?" He narrowed his gaze. "They usually forget the plot belongs to someone else now," she whispered. Operation Public Unveiling. Lauren Brenner's article was scheduled to go live at 9 a.m. June 10th, Ava's anniversary. But Ava wanted Nathan to see it before the world did. At 8:52 a.m., she slid his favorite latte across the kitchen island, her tone sugary. "Happy anniversary, Nathan." He looked at her warily. "Check your email," she said, smiling. He did. And there it was, a link to an unreleased article titled, "Married to a Predator, the Hidden Strategy of a Legal Power Player." Attached below were legal declarations, screenshots, even a voice recording of Nathan joking about getting rid of the wife with style. His face drained of color. You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I already did," Ava said softly. Then she picked up her purse, adjusted her coat, and walked out the front door like she was late for brunch. 9:01 a.m. The article drops. By the time Nathan recovered from the shock of Ava's morning gift, the article had already gone viral. Lauren Brenner didn't hold back. The exposé was brutal, elegant, and damning. It painted a portrait of a charismatic, high-profile attorney who manipulated the legal system for personal gain, preyed on women's trust, and fabricated contracts to trap his wife in a financial chokehold. Screenshots of the altered prenuptial agreement were published side by side with expert commentary on fraud and coercion. Sienna's account under a pseudonym spoke of Nathan's strategic charm and how he'd once referred to his wife as a sunk cost to be managed. It hit every legal and social media circle. Hashtags like Langston Clause, Paper Cage Marriage, and Gaslight Prenup began trending. In less than an hour, the firm's website crashed under the weight of public backlash. At 10:12 a.m., Nathan was called into an emergency meeting with the senior partners. He didn't return home that night. Meanwhile, Ava bloomed. Ava sat with Julia and Serena in a sunlit cafe 2 towns over, their phones buzzing nonstop. The article was being reposted by feminist law accounts, advocacy groups, and celebrity gossip sites alike. Serena had arranged for Ava's identity to remain semi-anonymous, at least for now. "You okay?" Julia asked gently. Ava watched a bus drive past, its side plastered with an ad for a reality dating show. She smiled faintly. "I'm more than okay," she said. "I feel awake." She had done it. Without screaming, without begging. She had dismantled him with the one thing he valued more than anything: reputation. Nathan's public downfall. By Tuesday, Nathan was suspended from his firm. By Wednesday, clients began to pull out of high-profile deals he had been leading. A leaked internal memo described ethical breaches under review. No one in the office said his name aloud anymore. He had become a liability. Paparazzi caught him leaving the firm with his belongings in a cardboard box. His tailored suit looked suddenly ill-fitting. His expression, vacant. But Ava wasn't finished yet. She didn't want him fired. She wanted him seen for who he really was. And she had one final public card to play: the podcast interview. Lauren had invited Ava to speak anonymously on her investigative podcast, The Untangling. Ava agreed, on one condition: "I want to speak as myself, no masks." The episode was recorded in a quiet studio in Brooklyn. Lauren's questions were calm, empathetic, but unflinching. "What made you stay?" "I didn't know I was in a cage until I tried to move," Ava said. "Nathan didn't hit me. He didn't scream. He just erased me piece by piece, with logic and rules. I signed things I didn't understand. I doubted things I knew. I disappeared." "What changed?" "I found the clause, then I found myself." The episode aired under the title Clause 14, How Ava Langston Rewrote Her Marriage from the Inside Out. It hit 1 million listens in 72 hours. The threat. Nathan broke his silence the following week with a cease and desist letter. Delivered to Ava's door in a sleek black envelope, it claimed defamation, intentional emotional distress, and demanded the removal of all media and social content referencing his personal life. Ava smiled as she read it. She handed it to her new lawyer. Yes, she had a new one now, a quiet bulldog named Ellis Crane. Crane chuckled. "Let him sue. We'll counter with fraud, forged documentation, coercion, emotional abuse, and perjury. And if he wants a public trial, I'd love to put you on the stand." "Let him burn it all down," Ava said. "He built it on lies anyway." The court date is set. Ava filed for divorce publicly, this time with all the real paperwork and a full evidentiary package. The courthouse stamped the papers on a Friday, sealing in a June 28th court date. Word reached Nathan through his interim lawyer, one Ava recognized from a failed fraud case 2 years ago. The irony was poetic. In a moment of quiet reflection, Ava stood in the mirror and looked at herself, not the makeup, not the curated wife, but the woman underneath. She wasn't angry anymore, and she was ready, unexpected visitor. That Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at her door. Julia was out. The house was quiet. Ava opened it slowly. Nathan stood there, not in a suit, not with a smile. He looked like a man undone. Dark circles, jaw tight, tie missing, a folder clutched in his hand like a lifeline. "I came to talk," he said. "No," Ava replied. "You came to control the ending." He swallowed hard. "I made mistakes, okay? I crossed lines. But this circus you created, it's killing everything." Ava tilted her head. "You forged a contract to strip me of everything if I left. You monitored my movements. You built a case against me behind my back. And now you're angry because I chose not to disappear." He shifted, shame flickering beneath his arrogance. "I just wanted to win." Ava leaned forward. "And you lost, because I stopped playing your game." She closed the door softly, and this time he didn't knock again. June 28th. The showdown begins. The courthouse buzzed like a hive. Local reporters lined the steps. Cameras clicked. Murmurs passed from mouth to mouth. Everyone wanted a glimpse of Ava Langston, the woman who cracked open the perfect suburban marriage and exposed the legal predator behind the lawyer's smile. Ava arrived with Ellis Crane by her side, wearing a soft gray pantsuit, her hair swept into a low bun. Calm, focused, unshakable. Nathan was already inside, seated with his new legal counsel, a corporate defense attorney clearly unprepared for the emotional gravity of a courtroom like this. He wore his usual navy blue, but the confidence had faded. His tie was slightly crooked, his smile too thin. He didn't look at Ava when she entered, but she looked directly at him. She wasn't angry, she wasn't afraid, she was ready. Opening arguments. Ellis stood first. "Your Honor, this case is not simply about divorce," he said, voice even but powerful. "It's about deception, an orchestrated, calculated campaign to strip my client of her autonomy, her finances, and her dignity through fraudulent legal manipulation." He held up a copy of the altered prenup. "This clause, added post-marriage, was never disclosed to my client, never signed knowingly, and yet it was being used as the legal foundation for Mr. Langston's exit plan." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Nathan's attorney objected. "Speculation, Your Honor." But the judge, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, merely raised an eyebrow. "Overruled. Continue, Mr. Crane." And Ava felt it, that first tilt in the scales of justice. Witnesses unfold the truth. Sienna was the first to testify. She spoke quietly, but clearly, recounting her relationship with Nathan, how he had lied about being separated, how he coached her to delete texts, how he referred to Ava as a calculation. He once said, Sienna testified, voice trembling, that Ava was just a locked vault, and he was the key. There were audible gasps in the courtroom. Nathan stared at his hands. Next came Eli, the junior associate. He detailed the unusual NDA Nathan had drafted for women in the firm, and how files would vanish from shared servers after late-night access. "Did you ever report these irregularities to leadership?" the judge asked. "I tried," Eli admitted, "but Nathan always covered it with just enough legal jargon to make me question myself." The judge nodded gravely. Then came Ava. Ava takes the stand. She stepped into the witness box with poise. Ellis guided her gently. "Can you tell us when you first discovered the altered clause?" "Yes," Ava replied. "It was late last fall. I was looking for a tax document and found a second version of our prenup, with additions, dated after our marriage, not in my handwriting, not part of what I signed." "And how did you respond?" "I froze," she said, eyes shining. "Then I started recording everything." She recounted her silent collection of data, the conversations, the fake emails, the surveillance photos, the burner account, the Reddit post. "Why go public?" Ellis asked. "Because it was the only way to stop him from controlling the narrative," Ava said. "Nathan didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to destroy me, financially, emotionally, socially. I had two choices, let him or fight back." "And why now?" Ava looked straight at Nathan. "Because I stopped being afraid of the man who wore my trust like a trophy." Nathan cracks. When it was his turn, Nathan took the stand with rehearsed calm. His lawyer lobbed softballs. "I was hurt," Nathan said. "I believed Ava had been distant, possibly unfaithful. I was protecting my future." "Did you forge the contract?" the judge asked bluntly. "I amended it, but I believed she would approve the changes, eventually." "Did you notify her?" "I left it in our files." "Did she sign it?" He hesitated. "Not explicitly." The silence in the courtroom was heavy. "Mr. Langston," the judge said, her voice like stone, "you are a lawyer. Are you honestly asking this court to believe that not explicitly counts as informed consent on a legal contract?" Nathan's face flushed. "I miscalculated." "No," the judge said coldly. "You manipulated." Ava's final word. As the session wrapped, Ellis stood for a closing statement, but Ava placed a hand on his arm. "I'd like to speak." The judge nodded. Ava stood at the center of the courtroom, not as a victim, but as a woman who had endured, unraveled, rebuilt. I spent years thinking if I kept the peace, I'd stay safe. That love meant compromise, even if it meant erasing myself. But silence didn't protect me. It only fed the lie. She glanced at Nathan. I don't need revenge. I need truth. And I think this court today has finally seen it. She sat down. The judge called a recess. Deliberation would follow. But as Ava stepped outside into the sun-soaked courtyard, surrounded by cameras and murmurs and flickers of admiration from strangers, she knew, no matter what the verdict was, she'd already won. The courtroom returns to silence. The room was quiet when the judge returned. The soft shuffle of feet, the creak of worn benches, the still tension in every breath. Ava sat tall, her hands folded in her lap, the ghost of fear long gone from her eyes. Nathan sat 2 rows behind his attorney, no longer straight-backed or confident. The courtroom lights felt too bright now, exposing, unforgiving. The judge's eyes swept the room. This court has reviewed the evidence, the testimonies, and the documents presented in this matter. What we see here is a deeply unsettling abuse of trust, not only between 2 people in a marriage, but of the law itself. She lifted the altered prenup. This document, she said firmly, is legally invalid, and this court finds that it was knowingly amended and positioned as leverage without proper disclosure or consent. As such, all marital assets shall be divided as per equitable distribution under New Jersey law. Nathan's lawyer whispered something. He didn't respond. The judge continued. In addition, the court finds sufficient basis for referral to the state bar regarding potential ethical violations by Mr. Nathan Langston, and a formal recommendation for investigation will be made. A gasp rippled behind Ava. Julia reached over, squeezed her hand, but Ava didn't flinch. She just exhaled. Slow, certain, like something too heavy had finally been set down. After the storm. 3 weeks later, Ava stood in her backyard, the sunlight tangled in her hair, the scent of jasmine floating over the fence. The moving truck had taken Nathan's remaining things that morning, what little was left. She hadn't cried, not when she'd changed the locks, not when she'd opened the bank account in only her name, not even when she received the letter confirming Nathan's temporary disbarment. Her tears had dried somewhere between the spreadsheet and the witness stand. Now she only felt quiet, peaceful. Julia was helping her plant a new rose bush in the corner of the garden. Symbolic, she'd said with a grin. New roots, Ava laughed. Let's just hope this one doesn't come with fine print. They both chuckled, and it felt good. Real. An offer. Lauren Brenner called a week later. People are still talking, she said. Your stories ignited conversations about legal abuse in relationships. I have 3 publishers asking if you'd consider turning it into a memoir. Ava blinked. A memoir? Yes. Working title suggestion, clause 14. Ava didn't say yes immediately, but she didn't say no either. The final letter. 1 month to the day after the verdict, a letter arrived in a plain white envelope. Ava recognized the handwriting instantly. Nathan. She opened it slowly. Ava, I read the transcript of your closing statement. You were right. I was playing a game you never signed up for. I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. Not just for the contract, for everything. You deserved a partner, and I was a strategist. I lost, but you found something I never had. Your voice. She folded the letter once, slid it into a drawer, and walked away. She didn't need closure. She already had freedom. A year later. The garden bloomed wildly now. No more trimmed hedges and manicured paths. Ava had traded symmetry for life. The rose bush was thriving. On a late spring afternoon, she hosted a quiet book launch in her backyard. Clause 14 sat in stacks on a small table beneath the sycamore tree. The cover simple, a gray legal folder, slightly open, with a single red petal slipping from inside. Serena dropped off a bottle of champagne with a wink.